So I've had many people reaching out, either getting mad that I had the nerve to make a video about one of their gods. Some people accusing me of being jealous of black women. Some people asking me, well, who should we vote for? I thought I made it perfectly clear in the video, the Stacey Abrams video, but if not, let me say it again. Right now, the way things are set up, voting is irrelevant. While wealthy men and women can swoop in and either buy the candidate outright and control them or use their money and their media to discredit and delegitimize a candidate that doesn't accept the bribes. Right now, while that's a thing, voting is a waste of time because no matter who you pick, the rules have been rigged to give the wealthy an opportunity to neutralize whoever you voted for. Now, in the last video, I went over Stacey Abrams and I went over why I think she's compromised. But today I wanted to focus on someone else. I want to show real world examples of what I'm talking about so that, people can go back and understand why I'm saying the things that I'm saying. I'm not just saying it because I'm don't like women politicians or Democrats. That's why I want to do this. I want to give this as an example. But before I go into that person, who unfortunately is a woman and a Democrat, I wanted to go over certain things in our government to help people understand that this is all a stage show and a joke. All right? So first, let's go over something that most big companies go through when they feel that they need to bring in more customers: rebranding. What does it mean to rebrand? Well, it normally means you're working to change the image of a corporation. Let's use Dunkin' Donuts as an example. In 2019, Dunkin' Donuts changed their name to just Dunkin', dropping the donuts from their name. They were trying to remove their association from just sugary junk food and join the health craze. Companies do it all the time. If they feel they're losing an audience, or if they feel like not enough people are paying attention to them, well, a quick rebranding will hopefully drum up some extra attention and bring more people your way. Why do I bring this up? Well, I'm hoping it will help me make a point about our government. First off, I don't really talk about Republicans because they're irrelevant in my mind. People like me don't vote for them, and they've already proven themselves to be racist ass clowns who will do and say anything racist just to please their voters. So I don't even have them in mind. The Democrats, on the other hand, are supposed to be the more level-headed ones who would normally get the attention of people like me. So I normally focus on the Democrats. All right, let's get back to the whole rebranding thing. So if you're a political party that's run by the people, for the people, you shouldn't have to worry about rebranding. It would be like you rebranding yourself so that you pay more attention to yourself. It doesn't make sense. If the people are the party and the party is for the people, then whose attention are you trying to get? Why would you need to do that? Why would you need to rebrand? The party is supposed to be working for the people. So if the party is doing its job, then that's all the people care about. The only time you need to freshen your image is if you're not doing what the people want. You're ignoring the needs of the people, and so the people are now ignoring you. And you now have to rebrand to try and get the people to come back. But again, if you're a party by the people, for the people, then the people would never leave in the first place because it's their party. Now, I bring all that up because I saw something in 2020 that was hilarious to me. I watched as the Democratic Party completely rebranded itself to trick stupid people into believing that they were indeed a party for the people and not just an invention of the wealthy to trick the people. So let's look back at all the presidential elections in the past. In almost every presidential election, you've always had old white males running for office. Every once in a while, you'd get one famous black male to run. But that's been the party's history, almost all old white males running. But then in 2020, something different happened. In 2020, you had two old white males running, Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. You also had two old white women running, a black male running, a half-black Asian woman running, a Hispanic male running, an Eastern Asian male running, a Polynesian woman running, and a homosexual white male running. This was hilarious to me. Because now the party had a representative for almost every demographic, which was curious to me. Are you telling me that no non-white person had ever tried to run in the past? Why was this happening all of a sudden? For all these decades, you never had this many non-white candidates before. Now, you may say, well, it's not that easy to run for president. First of all, you have to have at least $100,000 to even be considered as a candidate. Then, of course, you need all this money to pay for ads and airtime. Well, I agree with you. It's not that easy or cheap to run for president. But then, where did all these new candidates get their money from? And are you telling me that no non-whites ever tried in the past to gather the money needed to run? Why is this happening at this scale all of a sudden? I'll tell you why. It's because the Democrat and Republican parties are run by wealthy people. The wealthy people decide who will run, and then they help fund the person so that they can get the attention needed. And in 2020, the Democrats, who were desperate to beat Donald Trump, decided that they needed to rebrand so that they could pull more people into their party. And they needed to rebrand because they're not a party by the people for the people. They're a party by the wealthy for the wealthy. And the wealthy realized that people no longer trusted the image of the older white male. So they gave them a whole rainbow of candidates to look at in the hopes that this rebranding campaign would pull in enough people to beat the Republicans. And it worked. Wake up, people. These political parties don't work for you. They are inventions of wealthy, powerful people who realized a long time ago that they need to be able to control the masses. And they can covertly control the masses by creating this political process where people can choose their leaders from a handful of choices. But if the wealthy own and control those choices, then in reality, the wealthy are still your leaders. It's all a game. You think old white men are corrupt and untrustworthy? Well, then how about this? Now presenting The Squad, a diverse group of all women. And what has this diverse group of all women accomplished in the 4 years that they've been in office? Absolutely nothing. They're not there to actually help you. They're there to maintain the illusion of choice. It doesn't matter who's running, white, black, man, woman. Do you know how much money and influence it takes to be constantly mentioned in the news? Think about it, please. Whenever these candidates run, you find out about them because their name is being plastered everywhere. They're on TV, they're in the newspapers, they're on the radio, they're on podcasts, they have ads all over social media. Do you know how hard and expensive it is to gain access to all those forms of media? Just ask yourself and give it some serious thought. If you, right now, wanted to gain as much attention as one of these political candidates, how would you do it? What steps would you take? How would you get NBC or Fox to bring you on their network to do an interview? How would you get the Breakfast Club to bring you in for an interview? Where would you go to have a television commercial made? And how would you get that commercial onto all the major networks? How much do you think that would cost? Where do you think you'd get that much money? Do you know how much goes into getting the media attention that these candidates get? A lot. No regular citizen making $30,000 to $50,000 a year is going to know how to get all of that stuff that I just mentioned done. And they're not going to be able to afford it either. Someone who has the means is helping them with these processes. And what do you think that person or those people who have the means are going to want in return? Think about it. Now, I know that was a lot, but I said all of that for a reason. I want people to realize that just because you see a person that looks like you running, it doesn't mean that the person has your best interest in mind. All of these candidates, no matter what they look like, are in it for themselves. They're getting paid to act out the role of a politician who's on your side. It's all a performance. And with that being said, let's get to the person who's going to be the star of today's video. Her name is Catherine Pugh. Catherine Pugh is a politician who ran for mayor of Baltimore in 2015. During her run, in order to get more votes, she talked about wanting to work to help citizens get fair wages.
I support raising our wages in a way that it will impact our citizens, but I'm not just talking about minimum wage. I'm talking about giving people an opportunity to enter into careers that will be far beyond the minimum wage.
The citizens believed her and came out to vote. She won the election and was named mayor of Baltimore. Great. So the citizens participated in a local vote. They voted in a Democratic woman of color who vowed to help them. That's great, right? If you want change, you're supposed to participate in the electoral process, right? You find the right candidate, you listen to their message, and then you vote for them. And if you don't vote, well, then you can't complain because you have to vote in order to get the things you need done, right? Right? Well, remember when Pugh talked about wanting to support raising the wages of the citizens that voted her into office? Well, unfortunately, the president of the Greater Baltimore Committee, which is really just an organization that represents the wealthy business owners who would have to pay this higher wage to the citizens, he came out and said a minimum wage shouldn't be used to support a family.
Minimum wage was never intended to be a living wage or a family-sustaining wage.
Donald Fry, president and CEO of the Greater Baltimore Committee, says city leaders should shift their focus from raising wages to creating career pathways.
According to him, people that work jobs that pay a minimum wage aren't allowed to have families. So if you're a leasing agent or a dock worker or a warehouse worker, well, you're not allowed to have a family, right? Well, that's crazy. But who cares about what he says, right? He's not a politician. Doesn't matter what he says. He's just a wealthy guy who's just saying a lot of crap. He's not a politician. He doesn't make the laws. You know, the politicians we voted for, they dictate what our wages should be, not the wealthy. And the Democratic mayor that we voted for and that we put in office, well, she already said she supports raising the minimum wage.
Mayor Catherine Pugh says she will veto a bill to eventually raise the minimum wage in Baltimore to $15 an hour.
Yeah, it's a decision the mayor says she did not make lightly, but after consulting with a number of stakeholders and small businesses, she's ultimately going with the state's lead when it comes to the city's minimum wage.
So I am vetoing this bill.
The fight for 15 comes to a close, at least for now, as Baltimore City Mayor Catherine Pugh announces she will not sign off on the measure to increase the city's minimum wage to $15 an hour by the year 2022.
Fight for 15! Wait a minute. Did she just... What happened here? What about the promises she made? Why would she go against what she promised?
The economic impact that I think that this has on the city, making us the hole in the donut, it is not appropriate at this time that I would sign this bill.
Adding that she believes the best course of action is to follow the state's lead, which calls for a minimum wage increase of $10.10 by 2018.
I'm just concerned that I must do what is right by the citizens of Baltimore as its chief executive officer.
So you see, voting doesn't mean anything when the wealthy can just bribe our politicians and then control their actions. If you had a job that was paying you $30,000 a year, and another company came along and told you that they'd pay you $300,000 a year if you joined them, would you stop working for the first company and start working for the one that's giving more money? If you said yes, then why do you think politicians are any different? They're going where the money is. And the messed up part of all of this is that the politicians know what they need to do to help the citizens that voted them into office. Yet they'll still deny the citizens those things because they've been told to by the wealthy people that are paying them. So the citizens who voted the politician into office still have to suffer, while the politician becomes richer and more comfortable at the expense of the voters. In this interview, Catherine Pugh acknowledges that her citizens need to be in a position to better themselves economically in order to help stop the crimes that are devastating their city.
How are we approaching this ever-spiking level of crime?
Well, first of all, you got to get guns off the streets of our city. And we do have legislation in Annapolis trying to help remove guns off the streets of our city. But you got to get people to work. I mean, unemployment, homelessness, all of these things are symptomatic of the problems that we're facing. And I said this last night. You can put 1,000 more police officers on the streets every single day, and you will not solve the problem of crime in our streets. You've got drug addiction in the city, opioid addiction in our city. You've got more drug treatment centers in this city than any other jurisdiction in the state. And if you just stop on the corners and ask some of these folks where they're from, they're not all from Baltimore.
Right.
But we have to, we don't stop people when they're walking into a drug treatment center and ask them where they're from.
Right.
We just try to take care of them. So we've got to create the jobs and the opportunities and the training programs for the people who are unemployed. We have to recognize that we have 10,000 returning citizens every year. And as my good friend who runs a downtown partnership says, give individuals jobs because they may turn out, who are returning citizens, because they may turn out to be some of your best employees.
So despite knowing the fact that if our citizens have access to more money, the horrible crime rate that's plaguing them will drop, she still decided to veto the bill that would provide them with more money. How sick and demonic is that? And why would she do that? Well, as I've been trying to tell you all this time, the politicians are paid to do what's in the best interest of the wealthy and to do everything they can to keep the poorer people poor. Because if everyone is rich, then no one is. And the wealthy can't have that. They need the majority of the population to be poor. So they pay politicians to distract, divide, and placate the citizens. Now, you may be asking me, well, what proof do you have that politicians are being paid by the wealthy? Well, that's why I use Catherine Pugh as an example. Shortly after she worked to sabotage her own citizens, she got caught with her hand in the cookie jar.
Those Healthy Holly books, the feds say, were stolen property. The event at the height of her scheme, totaling more than $800,000 collected from entities that did business with the city and state.
Always remember this. When I say wealthy people pay money to bribe politicians, it's almost never just a wad of cash or a check that's given directly to the politician. The wealthy have come up with a whole bunch of ways to bribe people. So in my last video on Stacey Abrams, I went over how she was given a television deal for a book that she just published. That deal will net her millions. That's how bribery works. The wealthy will give certain contracts to politicians, like a book deal or television deal or a future job in one of their companies. And in Catherine Pugh's case, she was being paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for a book that she published. Another book bribery scheme, just like Abrams. So Catherine Pugh wrote a book called Healthy Holly. Then, businesses that wanted to bribe her would give her money and then lie and say the money was actually just to purchase copies of her Healthy Holly books. But when prosecutors checked, the books that these companies were supposed to be purchasing with their bribes had never even been printed. So in reality, wealthy business owners in Baltimore were just giving Catherine Pugh hundreds of thousands of dollars. And what do you think these businesses were getting in return? Well, in one case, Catherine Pugh helped to approve a $4 million salary to the CEO of a wealthy business. In return, that wealthy business gave Catherine Pugh $500,000. The business said the $500,000 was for the copies of Pugh's Healthy Holly books. But the books they said they ordered had never even been printed, so they didn't exist. And Catherine Pugh wound up going to jail. The CEO of the wealthy business didn't go to jail, but Catherine, after being caught taking bribes, had to resign and go to prison.
Former Mayor Catherine Pugh sentenced to 3 years in prison.
Again, I'm apologetic to the citizens of Baltimore. Nobody loves Baltimore more than I do. I don't think this is the last chapter for Catherine Pugh.
The final chapter in a scandal that rocked Baltimore.
A fast fall indeed. This time last year, the public did not know of this scheme, and now she's facing 3 years in prison. Pugh had faced 35 years up to that for the conspiracy, fraud, and tax evasion charges, but Judge Deborah Chazanow said 3 years would send a message of deterrence.
This investigation was about a story of greed, a story of lying, a story of deceit.
And that's how it works. Catherine Pugh was a Democratic woman of color who preached about working for the citizens. She took money and went against what the citizens needed. She was paid to go against what the citizens wanted and needed, even though the citizens are the ones that put her in a position of power. Now, according to most of Stacey Abrams' followers, Catherine Pugh is the type of person to vote for. She's black, she's a woman, she's a liberal Democrat, and she talks about fighting for the citizens, just like Stacey Abrams. But let's remember, the citizens did vote this Democrat into office. And when she got into office, she used her position to enrich herself and worked to keep her citizens poor and destitute. Do you honestly believe that Stacey Abrams would have been any different? Do you think Raphael Warnock will be any different? Maybe while they're taking bribes like Catherine Pugh, they won't get caught. But I would bet my life that they would do like every other politician, get into office, work to enrich themselves, and do whatever their wealthy masters tell them to do. It's all a game. Stacey Abrams, Brian Kemp, Raphael Warnock, Herschel Walker, they're all handpicked by the wealthy. The wealthy finance their campaigns and then give them their marching orders. And the orders that they give them are never to help the average citizen. The same way that the banks hired an actual actor, Ronald Reagan, to play the role of president. All the while, they were the ones controlling things.
See that guy standing next to the president? You know, the one that looks like a butler? His name was Don Regan, the chairman of Merrill Lynch, the richest and biggest retail brokerage firm in the world. He took the key position of Treasury Secretary so he could enact the tax cuts that the rich wanted. Regan then became White House Chief of Staff as the president started to fade.
Then they should give the president what 43 governors have, a line item veto. And
Who tells the president to speed it up? The man from Merrill Lynch, that's who. Things in America would never be the same again. The country would now be run like a corporation.
We're going to turn the bull loose.
This is nothing new. Voting is irrelevant when all of the candidates running are controlled by the same small group of wealthy people. Because no matter who you pick, you're just still giving your power over to the small group of wealthy people who are controlling the candidates with bribes. So once again, I'll try to spread my message. Money is the determining factor here. If the wealthy are using money to control your politicians, which in turn controls your government, which in turn controls your lives, what do you need to do to wrest back that control? Take away their money. And they get their money from you. When you shop in these big chain stores, you're funneling your money to these wealthy people. The wealthy people then take your money and use it to control your government. So in reality, by blindly shopping and giving your money to these big corporations, you're financing everything bad that happens to you. You have to pull your money. Stop shopping at these big chain stores. The big stores that you see in every city, every state, the Krogers, the Macy's, the Walmarts, the H&M's, the Burger Kings, the McDonald's, the Longhorns, the Applebee's, all these big chain stores, you have to stop shopping at these stores. If you need clothes, buy them online from small vendors. Find a mom and pop shop that's run locally that you can buy them from. If you need food, buy it from a local bodega, buy it from a farmer's market, buy it from some local store, or grow the food yourself. If you need certain things, you have to find a way to get it without pumping your money into the accounts of these big corporations. Use your social media presence to spread this message to the people you know. Talk about it at work. Tell your friends. Tell your family. Right now, things are running just fine. We keep working and we keep shopping. So we keep running their businesses for them by working, and then we take the money they give us in the form of our wages, and we pump that right back into their accounts by shopping in the businesses that they have a stake in. So for the wealthy, everything is just fine. They don't have a reason to change anything that they're doing. So you'll never get a livable wage, or universal health care, or police reform, or any of the other things you need in order to better your life. For all of my brothers and sisters out there who are fighting for reparations, good luck. As long as you keep shopping, you'll never get anything. Even if you withhold your vote, that doesn't matter, because voting doesn't matter. And the wealthy who are in control will just change the rules of the game like they're doing right now. They're bringing over immigrants who will more than likely be able to vote in the future. So they've just replaced your vote. They've already changed the rules of the game. So if you don't vote, who cares? If you vote, who cares? Voting doesn't matter, and not voting doesn't matter either. The only thing that matters to them is that you don't revolt and that you keep shopping and working. As long as you don't change those two things, they don't care. You can protest until your head falls off. They don't see the protests or hear them. They don't even know that they're taking place. The politicians that you're protesting to don't care about you protesting because they're being paid to ignore you and to try to keep you placated. Their job is to distract you. It's their job. This system was put in place centuries ago, and you spending a few hours in the street with placards isn't going to do anything but waste your time. You have to get the attention of the people that are in control, and you'll only get their attention once you stop their money flow. Once the money stops rolling in, then and only then will they come out and ask, what's wrong? And it's only then that they'll instruct their employees, your politicians, to find out what you want. So please stop shopping. I don't ask people to share my videos. I don't ask people to like or subscribe to my channel or anything like that. I just ask that if you've listened to this and it makes sense to you, that you share the concept, the message, and the idea that if you stop shopping, only then will you get some change. Stop shopping.